Good morning, folks, and thanks for joining us again for another Workshop Wednesdays. I see we've got some familiar faces in the audience today, and as usual, we'll be entertaining all your questions. And today is kind of we're going to be going through all the solvers through BloodHound. This is again the building blocks for any of your strategies that you're trying to build. It all starts with the solvers, and the solvers are where you specify how what to look at in terms of looking at indicators or specific behavior, bar lengths, swing patterns, that sort of thing. And then it's those solvers that you eventually take and plug into logic. So we're going to be looking at I guess you could say, the first step in creating any kind of logic template or for BloodHound. And as usual, I've got the disclaimer up here, though it's probably not going to be as important for today in terms of we're just going to be going through nuts and bolts type training here, not really doing any sort of trade recommendations. But if we ever do, just be aware that, again, this is only for educational purposes only. And just an aside before I pass it over to Zach, we've been working on some neat little features, and I've basically got some exciting things planned for 1.1 version 1.1. Those of you that have purchased BloodHound, of course, will get 1.1 for included in the update. But just to give you kind of a hint of what we've been working on, we've been working on these things called function nodes. Zach may have mentioned this before, but the idea behind those is to add some increasing flexibility. Other than just the typical and ORing, the idea being that you can look back or manage your signals based on, say, time, or manipulate signals coming in using maybe some advanced equations or whatnot. So maybe even counting signals that come in. That's a very popular one. For example, if you're looking at trying to see how many, maybe your system requires that your bars are, you need 5 in a row that are above a certain indicator. Right now, that's very difficult to do, but with the function nodes, that's actually quite simple. So anyway, that's just a little taste of what's to come. And I've actually been working on as well, just fine-tuning the ATM strategy for BloodHound, which is really neat. And those of you that aren't familiar with ATMs, that is NinjaTrader's automated trade management system. So we're now hooked into the NinjaTrader ATM, and so you can imagine that you can use BloodHound to create any kind of entry that you'd like using the BloodHound logic, and then use your favorite ATM strategy from that point to manage the actual trades. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility now, and we're literally just putting the finishing touches up on that, and that should hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything goes well, will be released next week. So without any further ado, I'm going to be passing the baton over to Zach, who will be taking you again through the solvers.
All right. Thanks, Jeremy. Hi, guys. All right. I'm going to launch a poll here for you guys, just to kind of get a feel for the audience's experience with BloodHound and NinjaTrader. So I'll just give that a minute, or a few seconds actually. All right. So it looks like we don't have anybody brand new to NinjaTrader, which is good, but we got some people new to BloodHound. I see a couple of new names. All right, let me close out the poll. I appreciate it, and we'll get things started here. All right, you should be able to see my screen now, I believe. Great. So as most of you know from last week's webinar, right? These next two webinars we're just going to start from kind of the beginning and go through each solver and explain what each solver is used for. Thanks, Randy. And yeah, give you an example of what each solver does. You know, how to use them, various ways to use them. So most solvers have multiple uses, and we'll try and cover all those. All right, so you can see I just have a blank chart. And for those of you who are brand new to BloodHound, so BloodHound is an indicator. So we'll go into the indicator window, and we'll add BloodHound, and it's down in the S's. Instead of being at the B's, it's in the S's. It's SI BloodHound. SI is for shark indicators. All right, so add that down here to the list. And then the next thing to do is to give your template a name. So when we click in this field, we can see this button pops up. Click on the button, and then the BloodHound window pops up. And this window here, there's two different windows that look very similar, but this one is called Setup Mode, and it has a chart button on it. And Setup Mode also allows you to load up previously saved templates that you may want to have. So you can see I have all these previously saved workshop BloodHound templates. And when I do tutorials for questions that come in, you know, I save them with your guys' name on them and then email them out to you guys. All right. So I could load one of these templates. So let me pick last week's just to kind of demonstrate. There's last week's. And you can see all the solvers load up with it, and the logic tab would load up as well. So, but for today's class, I'm going to create a new one. All right, so, well, so what I'm going to do is use the change button here, and it's kind of the same as doing a save as, but it allows you to change the name of your template, and call it, these are all called SI Training Workshop. And it looks like I've been typically putting a space in there. There we go. And put today's date. There. All right, hit the save button. Now you can see it changed the name, and it held onto the solvers on there. So it's kind of a good way of if you have a template that you like and you just want to do some experimenting, right? Then you can just change the name, and you're working with all the same solvers, and you can mess around with it. And then of course you could go back and reload the original template with the previous name on it. All right. But for today's class, I have a logic template defined. So I have to go in and I have to delete my logic templates before I can delete the solvers. So as a little safety measure, you can't delete a solver if it's used in a logic template. All right. So normally, this is what you would start up with, just the default time frame. So before I go into the solvers, let me show you a little more about this interface here. So we have this chart button, and this allows you to add a secondary time frame, or a higher time frame, or even a lower time frame if you wish. All right, so you can click on that, and then select the time frame. And then you can see here you have all the bar types that you can select from. You can see that, okay, so this is the line break bar type, this one is NinjaTrader's built-in bar type. You can see it has all the options selected. Now some of the custom bar types, especially the ones that have multiple inputs to define the bar type. Currently, BloodHound is not able to. So, like if I select this line break, this custom line break bar type, you can see the other fields, the other parameters don't show up. So I can't define this bar type correctly. So therefore, BloodHound can't use some of these custom bar types. Jeremy's working on that, and he should have that ability here shortly. So possibly with the next rollout, the next version rollout, there's a good chance you might have that ability to use these custom bar types. But some of the simple ones, like the Better Renko, which only has just the brick size, those custom ones work. So, all right. So let me. I'll just put this back to. Well, actually, for today's class, I'm not going to use a higher time frame, so I'm just going to delete that. And just to clarify, the default time frame always refers to the time frame of the chart that BloodHound is on. All right. So I have my name. I have this named. I don't need a secondary time frame, so I'm just going to click OK. All right, and then now we can see that I have BloodHound. I have a template name defined, and that's really all I need to do. So then I can click OK, and we can see it down here. BloodHound's now added down to the bottom of the chart. So now that was setup mode, and with setup mode, the BloodHound's output doesn't update in real time. So that's why I closed out of the setup mode. And then the button up top here on the chart, this is what we call real-time mode. I'm going to bring the window over. And so in this real-time mode window, this real-time mode will update BloodHound's output on the chart in real time. So if I just throw the bar direction solver on there, there you go. We can see BloodHound's output instantly, shows on the chart. So, and we can see that the chart button is missing. And in the file pull-down menu, you can see that we don't have the ability to load our other templates anymore. So, all right. So let's. I'm just simply going to go down the list one at a time. So I already have the bar direction solver on there, and as you can see, this is pretty simple. This is probably the simplest solver out there. So it looks at the direction of the bar. So this is a down bar, and so you get short output, simple enough. And for these up bars, you get a long output. There are a few settings in here. So to give a simpler way of looking at this, I'm going to put this mode into all or nothing. And use the number of bars. So right now it's just on 1. So let me find a single bar here. All right, so we'll use this guy as an example. Let me mark it with an arrow. There we go. So we can see we have a long output on this one up bar. Now let me change that to 2. And now we can see that there is no output on that bar. And there's no output on the next bar. So what this is doing is this is now, BloodHound is requiring 2 bars in a row to get an output. So we have our first down bar, and then on the second down bar, you can see there's an output now. Let me kind of let me stretch the chart out, make it a little easier to view. There we go. So now we can see on the second bar of the same direction, we're getting output, right? So here's the first up bar and the second up bar. We're getting an output. All right, let me put this back to that, and we'll go over the bar size. So for this, well, yeah, obviously this is a 5 better Renko. So if I put this on 6 ticks, we can see now. So the bar length from open to close has to be 6 ticks. And as you can see, since this is a 5-tick bar type, there's no output for any of these. The only time we have an output now is when the bar reverses, right? Because the reversal bar is 10 ticks. So now BloodHound's only going to give an output on a bar that's 6 ticks or greater. So only the reversal bars give us an output, right? So if I switch this over to a minute bar, there we go. All right, so now you can see all the bars that are 5 ticks or greater being marked here, or 6 ticks or greater, I'm sorry. So back to the mode here. So you can see it's either all or nothing, or you can have it calculate on a percentage basis. And that's going to reply to how many bars you're looking at. So it's going to take a percentage of the last 3 bars to determine what the output's going to be. So let me lower this and see if we get an output change. There we go. So like right here, we can see through here. So of the last 3 bars on a percentage basis, when we get to this bar, between this bar and this bar, we're greater than 2 ticks in the same direction. All right, that's why this one didn't fire, because these were not in the same direction, these 2 bars here. Let's see, and then start bars of go. So you can set this is kind of like a look back period. So let me put this back to, oops, put that back to 1 tick. Put this back to all or nothing, so it's a little easier to see. And let's see here. Let's actually require, let's see, 3 ticks. What's going on here? Okay. So here, let's mark this bar. That gave us a signal. And this gave us a signal. All right, and we'll modify the look back here. So now you can see it adjusted the look back by 1. So in other words, it shifted the signal forward. It's think of it the same as using the displacement feature here. See this displacement feature that all indicators have, right? You can displace the output of the indicator by however many bars you want. Right, so that's so this is doing the same thing. All right. Let's see. Han has a question here. Do you have a solver for outside bars and inside bars? No, Han, but NinjaTrader does. So you can use NinjaTrader's candlestick indicator. What is it? Candlestick pattern indicator? All right. So the way you would use that is, I believe, I believe we want to use the threshold solver for that. So we grab the threshold solver, and we can set the indicator to the candlestick pattern. And let's see, inside bar. I thought it was actually called inside bar. Han, do you know the candlestick name for the inside bar or outside bar? Let's see. Brian gave a suggestion there. Let me there you go. Hopefully you guys, everybody can see that question now that Brian put in there. He gave a link to NinjaTrader, let's see, Ninjacators. Oh, I thought that was NinjaTrader's website. Looks like a third-party website. Anyways, I guess go check that out, Han. But I know one of these candlestick pattern names is an inside and outside bar type. It's been such a long time. Bearish engulfing. Yeah, this bearish engulfing is one of them, right, for picking tops. And right, okay, so there's only one output, and I believe that output gives you a 1 or a 0. So I think that's all you have to do is just pick the pattern that you want. And let's see if we get, oh, hold on. I didn't finish setting up the indicator. All right, so if we get, since this is a bearish pattern, we're going to want a short output on that. And so when the indicator outputs a 1, then we want a short signal. I believe that's how we want to set that up. Now let me put it on something a little easy, quicker to identify. Let me put this on a doji. All right. Yeah, so there. So it is set up, right? So doji. Yeah, these are all dojis here. Bearish engulfing. Maybe I should turn down the trend strength there. All right, just going to scan through here and see if I find one. Let's put this on 3-minute bar type. Hey, there we go. All right. So there's an outside bar, right? Or more specifically, a bearish engulfing. Okay, Han. So I hope that probably helps you with your candlestick patterns more than just looking for inside and outside bars. All right. Okay, so we wrapped up the bar direction and got a question answered there. All right, Alfred's got a question. Let's see, Zach, do you have the fractal, aka support resistance pivot indicator in BloodHound? Do we have the fractal support resistance pivot? Alfred, that sounds like a multi-charts thing or a trade station name. When you say the fractal support resistance pivot, which I believe is the same as NinjaTrader's swing indicator. But if I remember right, the fractal one from multi-charts and TradeStation is a little more advanced than NinjaTrader's swing indicator because you can specify the forward strength and the after strength. All right, so Alfred, I think this is what you're looking at, right? So just just for some clarification, BloodHound is an indicator itself, but it doesn't have indicators in it. It's looking for conditions of indicators, right? So you actually have to put the indicator that you want to use into these various solvers, which are looking for conditions. Some of these at the bottom, a few of them do actually have indicators built into them, just because they're pretty specific indicators doing some unique functions. All right, so like the Dorshan swing trend solver does have the swing trend indicator built into it, just because the complexity of trying to analyze that indicator. So, but you could use these simpler solvers to do the same thing if your indicator had the correct output. So in general, BloodHound doesn't have indicators really built into it. We do include some specialized indicators that you can plug into the solvers. So if I go down to the S's again, if we go to the SI, all right, we have Chameleon here, and what Chameleon does is it plots the close, the high, the open, median, mid, the open, the typical, and weighted. So it has all these candlestick price points that it's plotting so that you can get these values and use any of these values in the solvers. We have a couple of specialized indicators like the SI swing, which is kind of a more advanced NinjaTrader swing indicator. And then there's the swings, highs, and lows, which is the swings indicator, but it keeps track of other swing points with more advanced output features here, and all of these, can be plugged into the solvers into BloodHound. So Alfred, let's see. So Alfred, I'm not sure if the NinjaTrader swing indicator is what you're talking about. If it is, I kind of would need to know how you want me to demo it. So we do have, I can tell you that up on the tips and tricks section of the website, there is a tips and tricks tutorial that kind of shows you how to look for when price breaks like the previous swift pivot or swing high point here, and it'll give you a long output. And if price breaks a low swing point, it can give you a short output. So there are examples in the tips and tricks section for doing that. There's also an example on, let's see, there's also in one of the solvers here. Let's see, the support resistance. Let me see if there's an example on the support resistance. No, it wouldn't be the support resistance. Let's see, what would it be? It would be comparison. Yeah, so the comparison solver could be looking for, could be comparing price to the swing points. Let me go down to the examples here. There we go, yeah. So once again, I am on the indicator comparison solver. Right, so if you go to BloodHound menu, go to Learn BloodHound, and then go to Documentation. So we're in the Documentation section, and then click on indicator comparison. There. And you can click down on examples up here under context. And the example at the very bottom, finding higher lows and lower highs. And if I click on the image, there. So what this is, okay. Well, yeah, this specific example isn't looking for price breaking the previous swing points, but it is looking for when the swing points change. So we have this previous swing high, and then when the indicator detects a new swing high, then that's when we're getting a long output there. Or actually, what are we doing here? No, we're actually looking for a higher low. Sorry about that. Yeah, this one's looking for a higher low. So when this low point, see this low point's detected here by this line, and then when the low point, when a higher low point is detected, when it moves up, so this higher low point here is detected, then we're getting a long output. So that's one way you can use the swing indicator to detect, you could use it to detect, when price breaks out above these high points or low points, or you can just use to detect when a lower high is detected, right? So we have this high point right here, and then this lower high is detected when the indicator's output drops like that. So there's an example to help you guys out. All right, I see some other questions came in. All right, so let's see, Randy. There's a fractal indicator available at Big Mike's. All right, thanks, Randy. I'll have to check that out. So, Brian's asking, I'm not clear on how using multiple indicators for the fuzzy logic output works in terms of the addition of indicators. In terms of the addition of indicators. Is it straight addition? I get so confused when I add another solver and it screws up the ratio of all the solvers and I'm working with the wrong concept. Okay, Brian, I think I get the gist of what you're talking about. So let me this is a good topic to cover. So let me add, I'm going to add a couple more solvers and I'm going to add some indicators on the chart here so you can see what's going on. All right, so I've got a 14 SMA and let me also add a stochastics. Okay, so I'm going to have 3 solvers on to kind of help illustrate how BloodHound's output kind of divvies up the number of solvers that you have on your template. So if I turn on the bar direction, you can see simply that just with one solver on the template that you know, when the condition is met, simply, so let me kind of set this back to the default settings here. And yeah, there we go. All right, so when we have a doji, there is no bar direction, so there's no output. So simply put, right, so when there's one solver on your chart, that solver, right, all solvers have an output of 1, right? So BloodHound's output here is 1, as we can see by the marker, 1. Now, if I add another solver, so let me add the slope solver. So this slope solver is going to be SMA 14, and this white line is the SMA 14. So let me turn the bar direction off. Okay, so we have the slope solver turned on, and once again, right, so we have our output is set to 1, and so with only one solver in use, we can see that BloodHound's output is 1 to the long side, or -1 for the short side. And we can see here there's no output, and that's because this is a flat. This the indicator, the slope of the SMA is flat on this one bar. Okay, so now if I turn on a second solver, the bar direction, now you can see that our output, the output is either at 0.5 or 1. So what BloodHound is doing is it's taking 1 and dividing it by the number of solvers that are in use. So we have 2 solvers in use, right? So 1 divided by 2 is a half, or 0.5. So now you can see the output is going to vary from 0 to 0.5 to 1. So when both solvers are in agreement, each solver is worth 0.5, so you get 0.5 plus 0.5 for a total of 1 on the output. Right, so we can see the slope of the SMA right here. Let me just mark it. We can see the slope of the SMA sloping up, and we have an up bar. So they're both in agreement, so they're both outputting 0.5. And since each solver is now worth 0.5, when you add both of them together, you get a total of 1 on the output. So there we go. So there's our marker showing us that we have a 1 on the output. All right, so BloodHound took the value 1 and divided it by the number of solvers on the chart. All right. So next, what I'll do is I'll add this change in slope solver. And I'm going to change this to the stochastics indicator. So essentially I'm going to add a third solver. And just for simplicity, I'm going to change the default values here. All right. So the change in slope, so we're looking at the stochastics change in slope. So since we're to change it, the way I have the change in slope set up here, right, where the strong in direction is set to 1 and everything else is set to 0. So essentially whenever the direction of the stochastic reverses, you can see we're getting an output. All right, so short when the indicator starts pointing down, and along when the indicator starts pointing up. And once again, since this is the only solver in use, this solver, you know, its output totals 1. Now if I turn on the other 3 solvers, now we can see BloodHound output now is varying from 0.33, in other words 1/3. So now each solver, because I'm using 3 solvers, are worth 1/3. And so BloodHound will add each solver together to total 1. So in this situation, so like on this bar here, let's see. So we're getting 1/3 on the long side because of the bar direction, right? This is an up bar. So the bar direction solver here is worth 1/3. So we're getting 1/3 on the long side. And then on the short side, we have 0.66, right? And that is because the stochastics is pointing down, which is worth 1/3, and the SMA is pointing down, which is worth 1/3. So 0.66 is 2/3 to the short side. And on this bar right here, everything is in alignment. So the stochastics just started to point up. So the stochastics is worth 1/3. The bar direction is up. It's an up bar, so that's worth 1/3. And the SMA indicator is just barely sloping up, so that's worth 1/3. And so then they all add up to a value of 1. Now, if I added this indicator threshold, right, which is looking for our candlestick pattern, now each solver is worth 1/4. Right, so we can see here on the output, we have 1/4 to the long side and 1/4 to the short side. And so here we have 2 solvers in agreement for a half to the long side. All right, Brian, so I hope that gives you a good demonstration of how BloodHound's output works. Now that only works when you're using the solver tab only, right? As soon as you start using a logic tab, as soon as I create a logic tab, then you can see the output changed. Now there's no output. That's because you have to start plugging your solvers into the result node. And so, so then the way BloodHound looks at the solver's outputs depends on what logic node you use. All right? And so after I'm done going through the solvers, then we'll go through the logic nodes and explain the logic nodes after that. All right. So let me delete these guys. And let's see. Oh, so Brian, sorry, I didn't see you were expanding upon your question, so let me read this here. So Brian's saying, for instance, if I want to use 2 linear regression slopes and find something that looks nice, but then I add a 3rd linear regression slope, and doing so completely negates the discovery working. So, okay, so you got it. All right, yeah, I figured I'd kind of explain what was going on there. All right, thanks, Brian. Alfred here. Thank you. I will send you a copy of what it looks like on MT4 and multi-charts. So it is something for multi-charts. Yeah, I do have multi-charts, and I do recognize the fractal indicator, but it's been, yeah, I'd say it's been over a year since I've used multi-charts, so it's a little fuzzy in my memory. Okay, Brian is asking or a comment here. So I guess we never need to mess with the output. Maybe that's what I was doing wrong. Okay, yeah, so Brian, yeah, messing with the output is, let me just simply go back to this slope indicator here. Yeah, so when you change the output, let me go and delete, there we go, delete my logic node, or logic template, I'm sorry. So if changing the output here allows you to take advantage of the fuzzy logic part. So I could specifically say, so even though I have 2 solvers on here, they're each worth 0.5 on their output. If I wanted to, if I thought that the slope was not that important, I could I could change the output here to 0.5, and well, because I'm not using any kind of maximum or minimum slope, right? They're both set to 0. I could set this to 0, right? And we can see the output here. BloodHound's output doesn't change because we still have the greater than max set to 1, and the maximum slope is 0. But I could change this to 0.5. And now we can see the output of that solver is reduced to 0.5. So it kind of reduces the importance of this solver, which is gets you into the fuzzy logic portion. And then if I turn the second solver on, you can see even when both solvers are in agreement, right, the bar direction and the slope is up right here on this bar, we can see the output. I'll slide this over so you can see the marker. So for this particular bar where the slope is up and the bar is up, our output only adds up to 0.75. And right, so that's because this solver, its output only gets to a maximum of 0.5. But because we have two solvers here, each solver's output gets divided by a half because we have two solvers. So then this slope solver, its 0.5 output gets divided in half to 0.25 or a quarter. So therefore, the bar direction is worth a half, and the maximum output that the slope solver can be is 0.25 because you take the half and divide by half again, giving you a quarter. Right, so here, so this long output, which is 0.25, is from the slope solver, which is still pointing up. The slope is still pointing up on the indicator, but the bars are down. These are down bars. So we have a 0.5 on the short side from the bar direction, and we have a quarter on the long output from the slope solver. So you can see that when you add the two together, the most you can get is this 0.75. So Brian, that's probably what you're experiencing. Yeah, so just to keep it simple, I would suggest just keeping your outputs to 1, unless you're good at trigonometry and calculus and all that, and you really want to get into fuzzy logic, then you can start varying, the output of this, and I would only use that in combination when you're using a logic template as well. So. All right, so Brian's asking, should we be using negative numbers anywhere in the solvers? No. That's just a simple no. So, yeah, I really haven't found any practical use for using a value other than 1 for the solver's output, a 1 or a 0, just either on or off. Yeah, I guess I would really get into something complex to use something other than 1. All right, so Randy's got another comment here. You would have to change the output threshold of the template to 0.75 in this case to show an output correct. Well, to show a signal or to show a racing stripe, yes. So the output, the output is this bar plot. This plot, using the bar style. So that's the output, and yeah, I commonly refer to the racing stripe as like our signal. So yeah, so if I change this back to 0.5, right? So there's no racing stripe now because our threshold, you can barely see the line up here, and you can barely see the red line down here. So that line, which is at 0.8, represents our threshold. So if I go into the indicator window, we can see our threshold values here. So they're set to 0.8. Right, so to help you guys see the threshold lines, I'll set them to white and then dial them down by setting them to dashed, and then I'll set this to 7.5. I'll set both thresholds to 7.5. So now you can see our threshold line is now set to 7.5, and so now we're getting a racing stripe in the background. So in other words, our our solvers, enough solvers are giving us an output to give us a signal for our racing stripe. So, so a racing stripe doesn't necessarily mean you have a signal, because you can turn the racing stripes off. Right, so I can turn the racing stripes off. And so it doesn't paint the whole chart now. It's still shading, the BloodHound panel. So you can see there. Right. And so the purpose of shading the background is to let you know that if you plug BloodHound into a strategy to turn it into an automated strategy, you're going to get a traits fire whenever the background is shaded. And that's because the output equals your threshold or is greater than your threshold. Right, so whenever the output, BloodHound's output, meets your threshold value, then that would fire off a signal to your strategy to take a trade. So that's what the purpose of this racing stripe is. Or if you're a discretionary trader, just so you could easily see when your signals are firing on your chart. So normally when I'm working with the signal, normally I set my threshold a little higher. I usually like my tolerance to be a little higher, so I usually set it to 0.9. Doesn't mean it's better or worse, but it just means that that all my signals, more of my signals, have to be in alignment in order to get that trade signal. So let me set this back to 1. There we go. All right. Let's see. All right. So I think I got all you guys' questions answered. So let me continue on here. All right, we got another half an hour where I'm going to try and wrap this webinar up by 12 o'clock. All right, so let's see if we can get through another solver here. So we did the bar direction, so let's do the bar length. Add that on there. All right, so we have the bar length. This is a fairly another simple indicator. Just looking at the total length of the bar, so it's looking from the high to the low value. And what I'm going to do is, you can see it's defaulted to ATRs. And so ATRs allows you to, or allows the solver to adjust with the volatility. Right, so as the bar lengths get longer in general, the ATR increases, and so the bar length has to get longer and longer in order to meet your criteria. But that's a little hard to visualize. It's a little easier to see ticks, how many ticks a bar is. So let me change this to ticks, and that's a little easier to see. All right, so let me let's scroll through here. See, I'm on 3 minute. Let me go back to 1 minute so we get some smaller bars. So here we go. Okay. So here's a couple of dojis, and we can see there's no output. And that is because I'm looking for bars that are 1 tick in length or longer. So like this doji is 1 tick in length. All right. Let's see what instrument. I'm on the NQ, and let me change my grid properties. Set to 10 ticks. That's right. So let me put this to 4. There we go. All right. So we can see the NQ is divided in 0.25 ticks. So the only type of bar that would be 1 tick or less would be a doji. So any bar that has any kind of length to it is at least 1 tick. So therefore we're getting a plot. So let me up this to 3 ticks. Let me actually I'll up this to 4 ticks. So now we're looking for a bar that is at least 1 point in length. So here's a perfect example. So the low is at 34 and the high is at 35. So that's 4 ticks. So any bar greater than 4 ticks is plotting here. Right. And we can take an average. So you can see here we have a mode here. So we can take an average, where we can put a period in here. So I can say look at a 3-bar average. So as we can see, these 3 bars right here, let me mark them. So from there to there, we can see these bars are only 2 ticks in length, so obviously they don't qualify. And then we get a bar here that's 3 ticks. This bar is 4 ticks. And is it 4 or is it 5 ticks? It's 4 ticks. And another bar that's 4 ticks. So, and we're averaging them out. So I guess statistically, when you average out this 3 plus 4 plus 4, yeah, you can see the output. So you got to remember, we're using a fuzzy logic output. So this output is just enough that it meets our threshold value. So let me take this bar and move it over so we can see what the actual output is. Yeah, so BloodHound's output is 0.917. Right, and I set my threshold to 0.9. So when you average out 3 ticks plus 4 ticks plus 4 ticks, right, you get 0.91, which is just greater than our threshold that we're looking for, and so therefore we get a shaded background. So that's why that qualifies. Just something else to note. You can see that this solver outputs a long and a short, and that's because the bar length really is not directional. It's just looking at a piece of statistical data, just the length of the bar. So it doesn't tell you if you should be going long or short. It's just saying that this condition is met. So therefore, you get both a long and a short output. So if I put it in combination with the bar direction, then the bar direction gives you a trade direction. And then we get some short and long signals there. Okay, so back to the bar length. All right, so we can look at an average. We can look back at the last 3 smallest bars. And let's see here. So back to this area here. So this is the first bar. That's 4 ticks. So this bar is 4 ticks. This bar is 4 ticks. And then on the third bar, that's 4 ticks or greater, we get a signal. We finally get a plot. And you can see how the output is stepping up. You see how the output there is stepping up? Let's see if we can find another point here. There we go. So this bar here, this is our first bar that's 4 ticks or greater. Our second bar, 4 ticks or greater. Then our third bar, we get a plot. And even this fourth bar, which is 4 ticks. So we still get a plot. And then it drops down to 2 tick bars, so our signal is reduced. All right. Then, of course, you can start looking at the longest. So it's going to find the longest bar and carry that forward by 3. So let's see. So over here, you can see this bar here is 4 ticks. The next one is not, it's less, and this one's only 2 ticks. And then finally we get to the fourth bar over, which is less than 4 ticks long, and then and then the output drops. And then the next one is 4 ticks, so we get our signal output again. Right. So what we're doing is we're looking back 3 bars for the largest bar, and then carrying it forward. So the same thing occurs here. This bar is 4 ticks. Then we get a 2 tick bar, 2 tick bar, and a 3 tick bar, and finally the output drops on this bar. Yeah. All right, so this is a pretty simple solver here. So I think we're done with this guy. I'll move on to the next one. First, let me check your questions here. Let's see, Brian. So Brian's asking, is it currently or will it ever be possible to optimize solver variables? That's not something that we're considering right now. I never say never. Who knows, a year or 2 down the road, as we keep building upon, and we're going to keep building upon BloodHound and keep improving it. Right, you have to keep your product improving, or otherwise you get stagnant and fall by the wayside. So of course, BloodHound will keep improving. So in the near future, I would say no.
Hey Brian,
like I heard no.
actually Zach, I can sort of speak to that one. That's something I have been considering, just in the back of my head. The idea of building an interface to support that, but it's really early works right now. I mean, it's just literally just an idea on the back of a napkin. But we're definitely aware that that's something that people want. So at some point in time in the future, we'll take a serious look at that.
Yeah. Just a second comment to that. If you do that, make sure you have an Intel i7 processor, because doing optimizations like that takes a long time. So you definitely want a fast computer. I've done some optimizations back when I used to manually code my strategies with NinjaTrader and optimize my variable inputs, and shoot, I would have my backup computer literally running for a week solid with the optimizer, and I wasn't optimizing that many variables. So definitely want a fast CPU for doing those kind of optimizations. So, all right. So let's see. Han has a question here. By now, you have been able to discover combinations of solvers that have highly profitable backtest results when tied to a strategy. Solvers. Oh, okay. So Han, I guess I think you're asking, have Jeremy or I personally, discovered a strategy that we're trading with, that have good signals and stuff. So, and since I've been working with shark indicators, I really haven't put actually I haven't put any time into working on my own strategies that I've got. So I've got a little notebook of my own stuff, that stuff I've been wanting to get to personally, and so far I just haven't had the time to get to it. Just working with BloodHound and working with customers. So so the answer as of yet for me personally, no, I haven't, not yet. So, but I'm hoping to find some time so I can start working on my own stuff. So, as far as what I've helped out our customers with, that I keep that stuff confidential. Obviously, nobody would want to work with us if we, take your ideas and tell everybody else. That wouldn't go very far with people. So I never discuss other people's strategies unless you guys are willing to come on here and demonstrate what you guys might have come up with. We'd highly appreciate that. So, I'll just leave it at that. So, all right. So let me keep moving on here to the next solver. All right. So we have the change in slope solver. Let me add that on to the chart. And let's see, for the change in slope, right now set to SMA. I'm going to add the stochastics back on the chart, because that's the best indicator to kind of demonstrate the change in slope. All right, so there's the stochastics, and let me change the solver here. Yeah, just use the default settings for the stochastics. Shrink that up a little bit. Okay, so what the change in slope solver is looking for is obviously a change in slope. So, excuse me, let me take a drink of water here for a second. All right, I'm going to stretch this out to kind of exaggerate the slope of the stochastics. So right here on this bar, let me mark it here, we can see the stochastics starts to point down, and we can see that the output here is the strongest right at that reversal point right here. And we see here we have, this is also an inflection point. Oops, wrong arrow. All right, so we can see that the slope changed from pointing down to sloping up. All right, so we have an up inflection point, and here we have a down inflection point. And you can see the output is the strongest. The output is 1 for the solver. And then you can see the slope. The slope is it's steadily decreasing. So right here, the slope is essentially, it looks the same. And then you can see the slope slightly increases down. So the slope is increasing down, which keeps the output to its maximum value of 1. And then we can see the slope begins to flatten out. And so as the slope begins to flatten out, we can see the output diminishes or reduces. All right, so let me kind of simplify this. There we go. So now we only have a long, either we have a long output or a short output, not both at the same time. Okay, so let me find another example here. So, all right, yeah, so once again, right here is our inflection point. Mark that. And our slope is increasing, and then we can see the slope begins to kind of flatten out right here. And we can see the output diminishes on these two bars. And then as the slope begins to increase to the downside, once again, the output of the solver goes back to 1. So the output increases as the slope increases to the downside. And then as the slope begins to flatten out again, or as the slope begins to decrease, the output begins to decrease. So to kind of explain how this output works, so strong in direction is the initial reversal point. So when the solver, or so when the slope initially reverses, right, so this guy right here, this bar, we can see it was sloping up and then sloped down, so this is the inflection point right here, or the first bar that reverses direction. So we get an output of 1. So that's strong in direction, right? So, so as you can kind of get an idea, this solver was really kind of written around the stochastics indicator. Just like to give credit to Roger Felton. This is, he likes using the stochastics, and he likes, looking for these reversal points under other conditions, under other price action conditions. And so this is kind of what he looks for. So at these reversal points here, to him, those are kind of strong trend direction, strong trend reversal kind of indication to him. And so that's kind of how this solver came about, was through his trading system. So the strong in direction essentially is kind of looking at the reversal point, but it is also looking at when the slope increases again, right? So we can see that we have this little period right here, this little, let me, right, so we have these two bars right here where the slope flattens out, but then as the slope begins to increase again, then we can see the output of the solver increases again. So in other words, the slope began to increase to the downside, giving more strength to the slope. And so once again, the slope began to to get strong in direction. Now, so I'm going to turn this particular condition off, and so now we're only looking at the in direction but turning. So we can see right here on this bar, so what's happening is on this bar, you can see the slope is pretty strong down to the downside, but right here it's hard to see, but mathematically the slope is starting to flatten out, and we can see that the slope is starting to flatten out as it continues on. So in other words, the slope is beginning to weaken in its direction. It's beginning to flatten out. Right, so the slope is in the down direction, but it's beginning to turn. It's beginning to turn. It's flattening out, and it's beginning to turn around and eventually reverse. So that's what this one's looking at. And then number 3, in direction but greatly turning. Essentially, if the slope begins to flatten for a second bar, so this next bar over, the slope is flattening, is still beginning to flatten, then, so on that second bar, that's what this third condition is, greatly turning. And so then, subsequently, as the slope keeps flattening out, that is this condition number 3, greatly turning. And right, so the stochastic continues to flatten out until it finally reverses, and then condition 1 would be met. So I put a 1 back in there. Right, so at this reversal point, then we're back to condition 1 again, where the direction has reversed and it's strong in the direction. So, all right, so let me set these to 0. And normally, this opposite direction, but greatly turning, is set to 0.66. This is set to 0.33. And so what you're seeing here is, even though the slope is down, we're getting a long output. So this is kind of like preparing our logic for a reversal of the slope. And you can see, actually, let me turn all these on, because I was hoping to let's see, there we go. I can just adjust the zoom on that. So now you can see the threshold here, right? So the threshold's set at 0.9. So we can see this output gets to 0.66, even though we have the slope is down. We're getting ready for this reversal point. And so this is taking advantage of the fuzzy logic built into BloodHound. So your system could have other indicators that are saying, hey, we're going to get a reversal here. Such as if you have a divergence indicator saying that, hey, you've got some kind of divergence here, in combination with some indicators like the stochastic saying, that your slope is beginning to flatten. And so when you combine your divergence indicator with the stochastics indicator, you could get a signal just prior, just prior to price actually changing direction here, like it did. So that's kind of that. So that's what this opposite direction is doing. So now if I set this back to the default, so we can see that the slope is strong on the stochastic, strong to the downside. And then as the slope begins to weaken, the short output begins to weaken, but the long output begins to strengthen until we get the reversal in the slope. And then we get our long signal. All right, so that is so that's what the change in slope is looking at. Let me apply it to this SMA real quick, and then after that we're gonna wrap this up. All right, so we got SMA 14. Let me shrink that. Get rid of these guys. Let me shrink up the chart here. All right, so you can see here on all of these inflection points, all right, so you can see how the output of the solver is at 1 on these reflection points. And then, of course, if let's zoom into this one particular bar here. All right, so this is the bar where the slope reverses, but then we get the strong down bar, and so the slope of the SMA kind of flattens out. All right, so the value of the solver reduces, and then we get the strong up bar and another strong up bar, and then of course the slope begins to strengthen, and the solver, the output of the solver, goes back up to 1, maxes out, right? So I'm just looking to see if there's any other obvious points right here. Well, this is just a repeat what I showed you before. So we get the reversal point here. The slope's pretty strong, and we get this 1 bar where the slope flattens out just ever so slightly, right? It reduces the output of the long side, and we get a little reduced or a small output on the short side. In other words, you're getting this condition number 5 is being met to the short side because the slope is flattening a little bit. So, all right, I think I think I'll just wrap it up right there. So it's 12 o'clock, and we'd like to try and end these at 12 o'clock. All right, so we got through 3 solvers today. We had a bunch of good questions. So just a reminder, your questions always take precedence to the core workshop. So next week we'll start off with the indicator comparison and continue to work our way down. And just before I leave you, just for any of you new people in the room, just want to show you our various support options that we have. And oh, I already have it. There we go. So there we go. So this is my Skype account specifically for BloodHound. So it's Zach White SI for Shark Indicators. So if you see me available online, that means I'm available for instant support for you guys. So if you have questions, whatever you guys need, if we need to jump in our GoToMeeting room to work on a question that you have, we could chat on Skype, or we can open up a GoToMeeting and take care of your questions. So that's instant support that I have right there. Other support that we have is on the website. So on the website, so this is the home page, you can go to support, go down to contact us, and here you see you can submit your questions here. And so this gets submitted to our help desk, and so that allows both Jeremy and I to get to answer your questions. If you would like to set up a meeting with me to help you guys out, or if you'd like, a little bit of training or help needs solving a situation, then you can book an appointment with me. So the button over here, book an appointment, will take you to my my booking schedule. So the first thing you have to do is, put in your time zone. All right, so I put in Eastern time. I'm actually on Mountain time, but just for example, if you're on Eastern time, you can click OK, and then say you want to meet with me next Monday. You can click on Monday the 20th, and then that shows the times available. Right, so this would be 12 a.m. and then there's also 12 p.m. available. So I'm available early in the morning, well, early in the morning my time, and late at night on my time. All right. And just to note, this requires to pick 2 times. So that way, if, say, you wanted to meet on Monday morning, but for some reason something comes up and I wasn't able to meet then if you pick another time, another day, you could pick, Tuesday morning, we try to meet then that gives me a backup option in case I can't make your primary selection. So just so you'll need to pick 2 times. So you could pick the morning, or you could pick the nighttime session. All right, and then the times that you have selected show down here. And so if you got 2 selected, then you can hit next, and then that'll submit your request to me. And then when I get your request and pick one of these times, then you'll get an email back with the GoToMeeting link, and then we'll meet up using our GoToMeeting. All right, so let me go back to Shark Indicators, and see, also under support we have Learn BloodHound. And under BloodHound we have Learn BloodHound. So for the webinars, we do have the recorded webinars. So if you go to our webinars page, you can watch this webinar again. There are recorded webinars. Last week's webinar isn't up there yet, but it should be up there soon. And in the webinars, it's the automated trading. Let me open up this one. So this workshop, we demonstrated SI Raven when we launched it, and you can see here that there's templates that you can download. So this one is the BloodHound template, and as the instructions say, you want to save it to your NinjaTrader 7 templates, and then the BloodHound folder, and there's also a chart template. So this is the NinjaTrader's chart template, right? Which is when you right-click on the chart, you go down here to templates, right? And you can load up a template. So you can also, so that's what this chart template is. And of course, you want to save it in your templates chart folder. other quickly as well. Our support center, let me take you to our support center. And there's some good tutorials up on the support center. So you can see as we scroll down, there's this tips and tricks section. And this tips and tricks section is, these are all kind of tutorials. They're not in video format. Let me just click on one here. They are in written, and there's also screenshots. So these tutorials are all done in screenshots of how to, so the initial question is going to be up here, and then I go through and explain how to do what our customers want. So another resource to help you understand and learn BloodHound. And then the community support is generally, it's just a bunch of general questions about BloodHound. Then if you have a request, if you like to request some features, you can do that here in the feature request section. So all right, well, that's kind of the short version of the support center. And yeah, we just show one final section here. So in the documentation section, there's a bunch of examples that pertain to each solver, as I showed in the beginning of this webinar. So if you scroll down a little bit under BloodHound reference, you can see all the solvers down here. So here's all the solvers that we have. So if you want to get familiar with the support resistance solver, we'll click on that. And we can jump down to the examples. Of course, the descriptions down here, this gives you a very technical explanation of the various options, right? So this support resistance solver, it has two modes. It has a headwind mode and a tailwind mode, right? So this is kind of a technical explanation. But if you scroll down to the bottom, I give some examples to help explain those different modes and various different ways that you could use that solver, right? So this first example is using the solver with just an EMA. So you can see that white line, I believe, is an EMA. Then I think I have, let's see, yeah, then I have an example of using the solver with probably a pivot, using the Woody's pivots. So it has multiple support resistance lines. So there's an example of how to use the solver with multiple support resistance lines. All right. You can click on the image and it'll enlarge it. All right. So, all right. So each solver has several examples to help learn visually. So I'm a visual learner myself. All right. So with that, just wrap it up, and I'll see Jeremy. Do you have any other anything you want to add? Any upcoming things you want to mention? Any improvements? So we do have, just to let you guys know, we are working on a pretty significant improvement to BloodHound that we hope to get launched in a month to a month and a half. So, Jeremy, you there?
Yeah, I'm there, Zach. I was just sort of waiting for you to finish there. Randy had a quick question about the changing the templates how do you change a template when the chart is up? If you're trying to load
Okay.
a brand new template file from file, that's currently not supported in 1.05, but will be supported in 1.06. That you can just quickly reload it and then just hit F5. Otherwise, I think I might have misinterpreted your question, but there is a drop down. If you notice, just Zach, if you just want to touch that drop down, just the top of the chart there, just beside the BloodHound button, SI Training
You,
Workshop, you have there at the top of the chart. The drop down,
um,
basically, yeah, closest down, Zach. You can see it
you're
at the top there.
talking
Yeah, that drop
this.
down. Yeah. So
The,
if you have
yeah.
different logic templates created, you can select them and change which one's being displayed on the fly. If there's none created, then it just defaults to essentially a ratio node between all the solvers. Um, Han, sorry, you're asking about the mathematical symbols. That's definitely the goal, to have that 1.1. It may or may not make it, depending on that one's a very tricky one, obviously, because we'll be parsing text. But the idea is definitely to move in that direction. Um, Randy, I've used the drop down, but didn't the output didn't change. Um, yeah, Randy, maybe we can take that one up with you. That might be an older version. Usually, if that happens, if there's no change in the output, that's a sign that BloodHound may have had some problems, and we've been actually spending the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, just working through debugging and working on the stability of BloodHound. So my recommendation is to just go to the website and just download the latest version. If you own BloodHound, you can always get the latest version just as a download, and there's no difference in the actual file between the purchased version and the trial version. It's the same file. The way BloodHound licenses itself is it checks the licensing server to see if your machine ID um, is valid or not. So you can always get the latest version of BloodHound from our website, regardless if you've purchased or not. Just beware, we've had a couple customers that try to do the update, and sometimes NinjaTrader gets a little hairy when it comes to updating the new code, and the next time you load in, everything seems to blow up on you. There are a couple ways around it. We found is if you have trouble, just contact us through the support. But usually it just means trying it a couple times, and it usually involves doing something like that, and maybe opening up a code window and just doing a compile as a last resort. But we find sometimes there's some issues when people update. For some reason, the old DLL still gets referenced somehow, and it seems to mix things up. But we always seem to work through it just by closing it and opening again multiple times. So that tends to be, that's basically a NinjaTrader issue that we're still working through. But just be aware of that when you try to update, and if things go wrong, when you just contact us through support, we'll help you through there. Other than that, I think I'm done. Zach, do you have any last words there before we close it off?
Oh, that's it. So, thanks, guys, and we'll continue where we left off on next week's webinar. All
All
right.
right, thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.